Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a presentation of contextualization resources. As you can see, the sources included here, learning.edx.org, and educators are also included here. There's only one particular educator here, and she's Dr. Bestie R. Rhymes. So let's get started. Introducing contextualization resources. Non-linguistic features of talk, eye gaze, gestures, posture, clothing, facial expression act as contextualization resources. Contextualization cues. So, what they actually do is they shape how meaning is conveyed, how identities are perceived, and how interaction unfolds in classrooms. These cues are powerful but often invisible to the teachers, and these might be eye gaze, intonation, gestures, which might be like raised hands or postures, facial expressions, or even clothing, which might be wearing a backward cap and a hoodie, as in the example of Max, who we are going to talk about in the next few pages. Combinations of cues. Cues work together to construct meaning and identity. So example for this might be Max. Max is somebody in the MOOC who is a very introverted person, and he doesn't really, raise his hands in the classroom. So that's who we are talking about here. Max's unraised hands, clothing style, and hair make him come across as an introvert rather than an extrovert. Context. So the meaning of cues depends on classroom environment. So example for this might be a sea of raised hands or even well-groomed eager students. But a teacher may have to look beyond context to find out other resources in a classroom, as in the case of Max, who doesn't raise his hand. So as you can see here in the picture, there's actually a lot of students raising their hands. But the teacher in the video looks left and right and then chooses Max, who doesn't happen to be raising his hand to answer the question. And the teacher wants Max to answer the question even though he wasn't really raising his hand. Contextualization cues. Contextualization cues are somewhat like water. Contextualization cues are those interactional features like eye gaze, posture, intonation, wait time, speaking volume that we don't really pay much conscious attention to, but that, like water for fish, support our communicative world. John Cooper's research on cross-cultural miscommunication, as you can see he is on the right here, what he did is John Cooper studied how communication breaks down when people from different cultural backgrounds use different contextualization cues. So his work mainly, focused on Indian English speakers in Britain who often spoke perfectly grammatical English, yet still experienced misunderstanding. So what we're talking about is not grammar in particular. It's mainly the intonation here. The issue here wasn't grammar or vocabulary, like I said, but intonation. So here is the example. As you can see, British English speaker says, "Oh, this is the wrong form. My account is in Wembley." And the teller responds back to him saying, "Oh, I see." And on the other hand, when it comes to Indian bank teller, he says, "No, this is the wrong one." But he says it in kind of like an angry tone, even though he wasn't angry, that's just his style of speaking. And the teller responds back to him saying, "Why? What's wrong with it?" As you can see, even though the situations are the same, the response completely shifted here just because of the questioner. Contextualization cues in the classroom. Classroom communication relies heavily on the nonverbal signals such as facial expression, posture, eye gaze, intonation, pitch, gestures, and body position. So intonation as a cue, also known as procedural display. Teachers sometimes cue students to work the right answer through intonation. So, an example for this is yes or no type of question. I'm going to ask this question in two different ways, and you know, you can hear the difference when I'm posing this question. So the first one is, in this lesson is red the same as red? As you can see, I'm kind of raising my pitch at the end of the sentence, which signals to the students that the answer to this question is probably no. But on the other hand, if I just say this sentence in like a monotone voice, in this lesson is red the same as red, the answer is likely to be yes. Like students are likely to think that the answer is yes. Social variation, like Kumper's research shows, contextualization cues cluster into systematic varieties. So example for this might be Indian English, which are like intonational differences here. African American English, pronunciation or grammar. British versus American English, phonological differences. So social variation, also a great example for this might be like Americans say way out, but British British people say exit, or it's the other way around. American English speakers use exit, but British English speakers use way out. Registers, formal versus informal communication. So formal registers are generally accepted in classrooms, but students differ in what they consider normal. So examples for this might be Southern US students saying ma'am, sir, and this to them equals respect. But students in LA or Philadelphia might think that these terms may feel unnecessary or unusual. So this actually changes from context to context, or from people to people. Combinations. So what combinations are mainly is they're they're the sum of contextualization cues and how you dress, how you appear, and what kind of accessories you wear. These are mainly combinations. So students rely on combinations to convey identities and also to ensure their language functions in particular ways. So example for this might be, as you can see on the bottom right here, there's a gothic girl, and she wears severe black eyeliner, spiky dog colors, and she mainly wears dark colored clothing. And this might signal to people that you know she might be like sad, or she doesn't really smile. As you can see, this could be paired with lowered pitch volume, or minimal smiles, or maybe she's constantly listening to depressing songs, just because of the appearance, just based on the appearance here. Indexicality. So the what indexicality means is the ability of language features like words, gestures, intonations to point to social meanings, identities, or contexts. So a great example for this might be diamond-shaped hand gesture. So here in neighborhood context, what it means is loyalty and friendship. So it's got a good connotation to it in neighborhood context. But in school context, what it means or what it signals is gang affiliation, danger, or even crime. So as you can see, this simple gesture just changes dramatically from place to another place. Hotspots, interactions where expectations are foiled, where what we thought was accepted doesn't really happen. So these are called hotspots, as I said. And a great example for this might be like a couple of examples I've included here. Key and Pele classroom sketch. This was talked about in the MOOC. The teacher here notices subtle eye gaze instead of a raised hand, and what it does, it foils our expectation of how students show readiness, and we have to pick up on that. Gumper's bank teller example. So here, Indian English intonation sounds overly direct, but what happens here is it foils the teller's expectation for indirectness. Yes or no type of question in intonation example. Here, unexpected intonation disrupts procedural display, like the teacher's attempt at smooth classroom order fails. Thank you for listening to my presentation.